You know, I'm Lizzy. I'm Ann. Can you guys see that-ish?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yay.
Can you hear us, by the way?
Yeah. It'll be nice and loud. It'll be lovely. I'm a loud person.
We have theater voices.
What theater people? So this is how to take better cosplay pictures. I guess we're gonna wait for Jared to start our lovely little slideshow. I like all your cosplays, guys. The people who are cosplaying will do it lovely. And I'm sure there are photographers. Wait, who's a photographer in here? Raise your hand. Oh, yay! That's awesome! I'm not. Jared's a photographer. She's our photographer representative.
Yes.
She's not here yet. Hannah and I are but lowly cosplayers. So, anything else you think we should do to stall for time until Jared gets here? I'm Lizzy. I'm a senior at NYU. I've been cosplaying since Otakon 2009. My first cosplay was Ty Lee from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Aww.
What was your first cosplay?
My first cosplay was Harley Quinn. And I think I ended up not putting a picture of that in here.
Well,
it's probably better off.
the one with the chicken?
No.
Okay.
My name is Han. I go by Hampan. I've been cosplaying since 2008. I've done a lot of comic conventions, so it tends to be my primary thing is Comic-Con. I am a second-year law student. You can have a real life outside of cosplay and be like a professional. And I've been, like I said, I've been cosplaying since 2008. My first costume was Harley Quinn, and you know how she's got like the baubles that come off her head like this? I couldn't make them go up, so they came down, so they like laid on my shoulders, and I just looked like a really depressed Harley Quinn.
If we're going for technical first cosplays, I did with my best friend Justin in high school. For Halloween one year, we did Team Rocket. I literally had a wig from Party City. I literally went to Party City and got a wig. It was that bad.
All right, you want to go really first cosplays? I did a Sailor Chibi Moon for Halloween one year, and nobody had any idea what I was doing.
Of course.
And because like Mom and I were cheap, we bought like this little white skirt, and I had a white tank top with a bow pinned to the front. And then, do you guys remember jellies?
Yes.
I had a pair of clear jellies and pink knee highs. And people are like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm Sailor Chibi Moon."
So this panel, I guess, kind of started as a joke between us that we were like, I feel like a lot of our cosplay friends were really like great at craftsmanship and totally like, there's a lot of resources online and tutorials and stuff for how to get better at making things. And it's also like you can get better with practicing it. And we realized there's not a lot of resources for how to like take better pictures, for how to like model or whatever. I hear from a lot of my friends like, oh, I make these amazing props or like these great costumes, and then I get in front of the camera and I'm like, which is, we've all been there. So we just kind of decided, let's make a panel and talk about like things you can do to get better at having like the amazing cosplay pictures that you want to have after you've spent like all the time, effort, and money on like the most amazing, perfect costume. So,
or the lack of time, effort, and very, very cheapness, and you have really shoddy costume.
But you can still make sure awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. There's
Jared.
Who's our photographer slash cosplayer?
Yeah.
We were just saying name, age, first cosplay, and then getting started. Okay. Oh my god.
It's your turn, Jared.
Oh, hi. I'm Jer. I'm 31. What else are you saying?
First cosplay.
First cosplay was Tifa Lockhart from Final Fantasy VII. It was awful.
There is awful.
Yes.
There is a picture in there, I think, of it. It was bad. When I put it on, I thought it was great. I was like, oh, it's so awesome. And it was
On
bad.
the slideshow, I guess, if we want. Okay. Shall we get started?
Just hit the space bar.
Adventure time. Okay.
The first important thing for both the photographer and the cosplayer, although it tends to be more the cosplayer, is to study your character. It's really important to know who your character is, what they do, what their personality is like, what their persona is, if they have any sort of move that they do or pose that they do a lot or something that they say. It's absolutely necessary to have that, because otherwise you're going to not express the character through your photography or through the photos, which, although yes, the photos are for showing the costume, I think the costume comes out and it becomes alive when you have that persona on, when you have that character going.
It's also really important for me as a photographer when people tell me the characters that they do. I am going to, have a picture of your character in my head. I am going to be looking around the convention for backgrounds that will fit your character. So it's real important, when you tell the photographer what character you are, like, I don't know, I like people to tell me, oh, I'm like a really ditzy character, or I fall down a lot, or I'm really angry all the time, or I have a giant prop. Like, because if you have a giant prop, that will affect what lens I use. So it's very important to contact your photographer and tell them that before the shoot.
Jer also has done research on a lot of the costumes that she's going to photograph. She knows that it's something she's not familiar with.
I do research on the costumes that I photograph, but some photographers don't. So it's real important when you meet your photographer to assume that they have not. Because a lot of people just stand there, and the photographer's like, and then you're like, and then it's really awkward, and then nothing happens, and you get bad pictures, and it's bad overall. So assume your photographer knows nothing about the character, have a series of poses in mind, and we will go over that.
Cool. Next slide. Practice, practice, practice. Here we have two lovely pictures of Jared in hand showing what not to do. Do you want to explain how this is what not to do?
Okay, so this is my first, I guess you could call it crossplay. I was cosplaying Sid from Final Fantasy. He was a boy. I'm obviously not a boy. You can see my chest in that picture. I did not know about binding. First thing when you're cosplaying is please bind. And I am standing like a girl. So this is kind of going into maybe cosplaying something that's not your own gender. Research how the other gender stands, how they walk, how they hold their head. Because you can see I have my hips out like this. I have the curve in my back, I have my chest out, which is really cool if I'm like doing this kind of character, but for Sid, it totally doesn't work.
It's also really important to practice these things in front of a mirror.
Yeah.
Because
like Jared Zoolander. Just think of yourself as Jared Zoolander. Practice for hours and hours in your mirror.
Yeah, pretty much. This picture is from last November, so this is not like an old picture. This is one of my more recent costumes. And this is a totally in-character thing. This is something that she does when she's in this outfit. She is a priestess. But I didn't practice in front of a mirror, and my friggin' sleeves are covering the entire costume, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a picture taken.
So some of you, you can look at this picture and be like, it's a fine picture. You took it in a hallway. Someone did it with their point and shoot, and it's fine. But as a cosplayer, I think at some point you go to more than fine, and you look at these kinds of hall pictures and you study them and you're like, what can I do better? So every picture is a learning experience.
Next slide. Attention to detail and communication. It's an all-hands slide. All hands.
I like the dude in the background.
Yeah, it's pretty fun, actually.
It's really important to pay attention to what's going on when you're getting ready to pose for pictures. Less important in hall costume shots if you don't really care, but it's really important to check your costume, like know what status or what condition it's in, because in my one picture I've got my glove flipped way down, and otherwise, which is what is a really cute picture, and in the other picture, which is a beautiful picture, I've got my sleeve stuck in my glove, which kind of ruins the effect a little bit. Maybe not for everybody else, but at least for me, it kind of made it a little bit disappointing to see that, oh shoot, I should have paid more attention.
And again, as a cosplayer, you will notice these things in your pictures that probably no one else will notice. I've had pictures taken before, and I put them on DeviantArt, and like, the first person who tells me what is wrong with this picture gets a prize. And no one has said anything. So you will notice the tiny, tiny little details, but you worked really hard in your costume. And you know how everything's supposed to look, and when you get a picture back and you're kind of disappointed, that's not the feeling you want to have. So just make sure everything is okay.
And communicating with the photographer is a good way to do that. Like, I've gotten pictures back where it's if I was doing some kind of pointing thing, and my hand in the shot is blocking my face. And it's like really silly looking. And it's like, I wish that I had communicated with my photographer better, my photographer communicated better with me, to like tell me like, oh, lower your hand a little bit. So as a cosplayer, it's, well, whatever end you're on, just it's good to be proactive and take that step. If you're the cosplayer, ask, oh, is my hand in the way? If you're the photographer and hand is in the way, politely say, the hand is in the way.
Just to add on to what Lizzy was saying about the hand, like a lot of people have the hand pointing shot, they have the sword pointing shot, they have the bow shot. Make sure you're not pointing directly at the photographer's lens, because your hand will either block your face or they will kind of see a blur and then your face. So point a little bit off to either side of the camera, depending on which side you prefer, and they will see your finger or your sword or whatever, and it will be more in focus.
Next slide. More dynamic battle
Hey, it's me. Okay, so here is a 3-step of what to do.
Shadow from Final Fantasy VI.
Yes, this is made from Shadow from Final Fantasy VI. You see, I bound, so I don't have boobs, which is good. So that first shot, it's a kind of how to get that last dynamic pose with the sword. So the first shot, I'm doing what I feel is a dynamic pose. And when you pose as a cosplayer, you're like, okay, I'm gonna pose how I feel this character should pose. And you do a pose and it feels awesome, and the photographer's like, it's not so good. And then you look at that picture and you're like, it's okay. It's not very dynamic. My hands are kind of at my side, my feet are kind of together. So the next pose is better. You can see my feet are slightly more spread apart. It's very important when you're posing in a dynamic pose to I'm gonna demonstrate here, spread your feet apart, and B, have your toes pointing in a different direction. Don't point your toes in the same direction, like this. It doesn't translate well to photos. It makes you kind of look raised straight up and down, which is not dynamic. So point one toe in one direction and have your back foot pointing another direction. Spread your feet out like this wide. And then you see my hands are still I'm like hiding myself. So in that third pose, I got it right. My hands are spread out, I'm pointing toward the camera, but I'm not blocking anything, and my feet are spread out, my toes are pointing in different directions, so.
Again, this is the sort of thing that, from the photographer's side, it's great to communicate that to the costumer. Say, you look a little bit close together, make sure you spread out a little bit, or just give them a little bit of direction, like why don't you try shifting your weight to the back or shift your weight to the front, and it can totally change even the same exact pose.
I feel a good rule of thumb is when it feels okay to you, you're probably looking a little closed off. Because for photos, it translates differently, so when you feel okay, spread out a little bit more. Use this space around you instead of just kind of sticking here. Use all the space because it's all you over here.
I would also say for battle poses, I do a lot of like action battle, like fight girl, Kia stuff. But my big pet peeve when I see failed action poses is when I see a cosplayer sit in something that I can tell was comfortable. So I would say, like, honestly, the best fighting poses are probably gonna like take a toll on your muscles. Like if you find something and you like sit into it like really easy like this, then you're like, oh, well, whatever, that's not like a battle pose. If you get in something that's like a really deep squat, you can't see what I'm doing right now because I'm in a ball down. But basically, like if it's something like
I can't squat.
Yeah, that's no good because she's just sitting there. She's sitting into her weight. She can sit there all day. It looks really bad. I hate this angle when you can see like the broken angle on the ankle.
Yeah,
because if you were in a battle, you break your ankle doing that. Oh, guys.
So again, point your feet in different directions so that your ankles are not like
So
this.
communicate with your photographers. If you're in a pose that's very strenuous, I say go for it because those are honestly going to look like the best poses if you really are like working to be in like the battle or whatever. But just talk with your photographer if you need to get out of it for a second. It's totally fine.
As a photographer, I will tell my cosplayer if it's uncomfortable, just get up. Don't even like tell me, don't ask, just get up. Because I don't want to make you like hurt yourself.
It's the beauty of the digital film world.
Yes, I can always
you're
delete
gonna
the
ruin
picture.
Okay. Next. Dramatic lighting.
Yeah.
So this is kind of more a photographer slide for those of you in the audience who are photographers. And you use external flash. These are two of the pictures that I took with the first one is outside and the second one is inside. So you can use dramatic lighting in either setting. The best way that I found is to have your light, say like Hannah is a photographer, so Hannah do like thing. You're photographing me, and the light is like right here. So it's shining straight on the side. And even as a cosplayer, if you're interested, your photographer wants to,
Yeah, want to hold it? Hold it.
just demonstrate, yes.
Yeah, it's my flash.
Just kind of remember these very simple lighting setups, and if your photographer's like, what do you want me to do? And you'll be like, how about this? Because it makes it look like that. It's a very dramatic side-on shot, so half of your body is in shadow and half of your body is lighted, and it makes like a very dramatic anime type photo. So, thank you.
Shall we next? Posing women. Alexa. And Emily. And Jared.
Yes.
I'll pose like a lady. What were you guys going to say on this?
Yeah.
The S-curve.
Oh, yeah.
Say it.
I'm really bad at explaining the S-curve. The S-curve is basically this concept that it makes women appear curvier and slimmer at the same time, which kind of enhances the whole feminine look, so a woman isn't looking boxy. And the whole idea is you want the spine to kind of curve in an S shape. So that means kind of putting the weight to one side and moving the shoulders to the other.
So you can see my chest is sticking out, and there's a curve, and my butt is sticking out. And that is the ideal S-curve pose for women. It will feel really uncomfortable if you were a woman, but trust me, it looks good in the photo.
And you can do that.
About comfort? You guys are the wrong panel for comfort.
You can do the S curve from a profile where the front, the bust is sticking out and the rear is sticking out, or you can even do it from straight on to get that curve through.
Oh, you mean like your hip is pushed out like this?
Pop the hip out, and you put the weight on one side, and you end up curving straight on, or you can do like a little bit of both when you do it kind of from a 3/4. You get that S curve in the spine, but you'll also pop bubbles. I
Pop bubbles?
don't worry.
We're just making up stuff now. Next word, posing men.
Okay, posing men is hard because first of all, there are not too many male cosplayers compared to women cosplayers. And secondly, most men kind of show up and they're like, hey, and then the photographer's like, hey, and you're like, what is happening? So these are two poses I like for men. The first is, again, to men, you need to use the room around you. This goes kind of back to what I was saying about dynamic. Male costumes usually are very dynamic. They're about making you look very masculine, unless you're doing like a schoolboy, and that's more like posing women. So use the space around you. See how he's holding his cape out, and how he's holding his arm out? Make yourself real tall. Hold your arms out. Spread your legs kind of out. Don't put your feet together. That looks feminine. And if you're trying to do like a masculine, like tuxedo mask, I'm going to save Sailor Moon. Be like, I'm Tuxedo Mask. I'm going to save Sailor Moon. Not like, I'm going to save Sailor Moon. Okay. The second pose is a very strong. It accentuates your chest. And I don't like the crossing your arms like this. It's kind of feminine for a photograph. So what I did here is I had him hold his elbow, and that makes it like what's the word? It broadens your shoulders, it broadens your stance, and it makes your arms look bigger, which I think most men like.
And these can all go for crossplay, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This also goes for crossplay. So if you're a girl cosplaying a man, keep this in mind.
It's also really great if you're a girl doing cosplay, or a guy, whoever. If you're cosplaying, watch your friends. Watch the way that they sit. Watch the way that they walk, because it's really once you really pay attention to the differences in the way they hold their weight and the way that they hold their legs and the way they hold their head, it makes it really easy to kind of pop into that, because you'll know the difference between, okay, this is what I'm doing and this is what my guy friend does. He doesn't sit here with his legs crossed when he's leaning against the table. He's going to go like this.
Very true.
And Sailor Moon's not going to sit like this, so I really should, pose like that for pictures. Either.
Like that. Okay, posing groups / couples.
Posing groups is hard because
Dynamic battle poses.
yes, I guess when photographers ask for groups, most people just kind of end up getting in a line, and they're like, "Hi," which is cool. Do a couple pictures like
Great
this.
place to start.
Yes, it's a good place to start. But when you need more, I guess, substance in your photos, these are two good ways to do it. So this picture on the right with Final Fantasy characters, is it the left or the right? It's my right.
Yeah.
So it's a very dynamic kind of like, it's not a battle pose per se, but you can feel there's a lot of tension between two characters. No, and it's not a traditional group pose. They're not close together. They're not facing the camera. So kind of, especially for photographers, like think outside the box. Think, okay, I may need to use a different lens to get a photo like that, but I think I can get a photo like that and it will be different. And as a cosplayer, you always go for a different looking photo because there's so many photos out there. You go on DeviantArt and it's like photo after photo after photo of the same characters, and you want something different. This other picture on the left is another way to pose groups where I like posing one in front, kind of kneeling down or squatting down, and the other is in the back, and it creates a very dynamic line going from the front up, which is nice.
I think it's really important when you're with a group to remember that you need to give yourselves a lot more space than you would if you're just kind of hanging out or taking pictures to throw up on Facebook. If you're taking pictures to kind of be a presentment of the costume and to embody these characters, you need to give yourselves a lot more space because space translates differently in photographs. Is anybody into theater? It's very similar with the theater. If you get on stage and you're supposed to make this gesture to your friend and you go like this, from 90 rows back, they're not going to see you do anything. You go like this, and they're going to see this motion. So it's the same sort of concept with photography. Everything takes up more space in real life than it does in the photograph. So again, you want to reach out a lot further than you would if you were just kind of joking.
And going back to the just posing casual, like, oh, a cute photo together. When I do it, when I say, okay, just stand together, I'll take a photo of you, I have, say, like, Hannah is one cosplayer and I'm the other. So we're, like, here. And I'm like, move closer. And then my cosplayers are like, and I'm like, move closer. And then they're like, so when a photographer says move closer, you want to get, like this. And then in the photograph, it looks right.
Cool. I'm also a big fan of dying shots. I think I've had death shots, either me dying or I cradled Jared's dead body last night. It was great. Oh, this is so important.
Oh, look, it's me without a wig on.
I think this is the most important thing. I think the thing that I see the most in like cosplay pictures gone wrong, even if they've got their body right, there's something wrong with the chin. Either it's like way up like this or way down like my space. So you talk about chins.
Okay, so I have a weak chin, which means my jawline my chin does not extend very far forward from my neck. Oh yes, thank you. So when I pose, when I'm just standing and I'm like talking on the phone or whatever, if you take a picture of me, it kind of looks like I have a double or triple chin because of the way the light kind of shines in the photo, which is bad, and you don't want that. So when you pose people, or when you're a cosplayer and you're a posing photographer, keep in mind what your chin is doing, what your neck is doing, because what feels comfortable for you probably looks like this photo on the left, and it is bad. So what you want, I tell my cosplayers to point their forehead to the lens of my camera. And what that means is you're going to stick your chin out and you're going to point your neck out. You can see it like this. And you kind of look like a chicken. And it feels really awkward. It feels really awkward. But you end up with something like this on the right because you have that shadow between your chin and your neck, and that on camera translates to a defined chin. So for any of you, this applies to, I'd say 99% of people, unless you have a really, really bony chin. Please, when the photographer says like, lower your chin, when I say lower my chin, people do this. I'm like, no, please don't do that. So when photographer says lower your chin, remember to point your forehead towards their lens, like a chicken. I mean, don't do this, but you get the point.
Learn from your mistakes.
Oh, there's my Tifa.
Tifa!
Yeah.
Cool.
It's really important to take away from any experience that you have taking pictures what you can to become better at it. On the left is my Harley, and it's not a great picture of it, but trust me, I've got about 65 pictures. I naturally stand with my head kind of sticking forward like a chicken. And unfortunately, when people are not taking pictures from the front, it just kind of looks like I'm doing this. It's very attractive in all of my pictures. And when people take a lot of candid shots, they'll take them from the side. So I've got this gigantic chicken neck. And that is really important for me to keep in mind because I need to remember that I need to stand straighter and I need to push my head back even when I'm just standing around because I hate getting the candid shots where I look like I'm ready to go into the oven.
So the center picture is my Tifa. This is my very first ever cosplay photo, and you can tell. So I'm just kind of this is how I normally stand on a day-to-day basis. Like I'm at the supermarket, I'm in line, I'm like. Unfortunately, when they were taking this picture, I was like, I'm at the supermarket and I'm in line. So as you can see, I'm just kind of like facing the camera. I have my legs kind of spread apart. I have my arms kind of, I'm like, hey, which is a kind of a, normal shot, but you don't want a normal shot. You're in a costume. You want a really, really great shot. So pay attention when you're standing around to how you usually stand, and when you're in costume, do not stand like that. And again, look at photos of your character. Look at how they stand, look at how they walk, and make a note of that, and then make a note of how you stand, how you walk, and how it is different. and how you can change it to look like your character. And don't do that, because it's bad.
And then the last picture, I'm trying to do an angry face, and unfortunately, I put my shoulders way up and sunk my head way down, and I don't have neck at all. So I go from having a chicken neck to no neck at all, which is a really bad combination. And again, it's like I thought it would be this great picture of Katara being all angry in front of the waterfall, and it didn't work. But I can take away from that, like, okay, well now I know, be really careful when I cross my arms, keep my shoulders down. I can make an angry face without sinking my head into my intestines.
This is also hashtag practice in the mirror, because if you tried this in the mirror, then you know that it looks like this. Okay. Oh, is that the end of it?
That's the end.
Cool.
Awesome.
So we left time for questions or comments or telling us that we...
Awesome. Question.
What do you do if your character has like a specific pose or stance, and you try it out in front of the mirror in real life and it looks bizarre because, say, human body isn't built that way, or just like, it really looks weird.
So what I like to do is if you have like, even like a point and shoot and like a little tripod, what I do is I put the camera on the tripod and I use the timer, and I just try different poses. And that's why you have a record of what you have tried. And you just go through the pictures and you're like, I like that, I don't like that, I really don't like that one. And then you can kind of put them in an order to see what you started out with and what you ended up with. You can do this multiple times. And so when you have that record, it's very easy to say, oh, I already tried that, that doesn't work. And then build from there.
And just adapt it. If it looks weird, if it's like, yeah, just practice. And we all have had those characters that do this pose, and then you try it in real life and you look like, I don't know, you look really weird. But it's just like, if it's an animated character, like it's an animation, and people are comfortable drawing limbs that go like whatever, not what human limbs can do. So just practice and adapt it. And I would say if you feel like it looks silly, then like I would not do that in a photo shoot if you felt like you knew it looked like this when you were doing your specialty pose. This is a great pose. I don't know what you guys are talking about. But anyway.
I think this is my new default pose.
Oh, question in the back.
I have a problem that actually before.
You go in the camera and it looks weird because in the mirror your face is backwards. So one side is the other side and the other side is the other side, if you know what I mean. So it's a little bit warped. So what you see in the mirror, and expressions are so like, what's the word? Not delicate, but like not really dynamic, big pose. You can practice in the mirror. But expressions are very subtle, thank you.
You have like over 300 muscles in your face.
Yeah.
And to get those muscles to reproduce the same exact thing time after time is incredibly difficult.
For facial poses in general, I would say, I was one of those kids and teenagers that, I don't think I learned how to smile until I was, 16. Every picture of me from that age down is, when everyone has a really bad little kid smile. So it's I finally learned, and I consider myself to have big front teeth, but that's just me. So it's I finally learned, how to smile in a way that's, pretty princess. And it's also, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a preferred side. I definitely have a side of my face that I prefer. If you're in that boat, I will absolutely to a photographer be no, I'm going around on the other side. Because it's this side I feel it's very weird. For smolders in general, I would say, don't squint your eyes too much because the eyes are, where you get the story from. So if you're doing an angry look, I would say one, focus on keeping your mouth not too wide open. If there's a slight space in between your lips, I think that's good because it looks like your character's kind of open as opposed to tight lips.
The space between your lips thing is hard though. You gotta really
Very
practice
difficult.
it.
Yeah, but for smolders, don't if you're furrowing your eyebrows, don't squint at the same time. Try and keep your eye muscles kind of relaxed at the same time as you're furrowing your eyebrows. If that makes any sense.
If you have a smartphone, you can take pictures of your face. Do what you think is a smolder and take a picture because you have that front little camera on your
If you
smartphone.
have an iPhone.
Yes. We're encouraging narcissism here is what we're saying.
And the comment about relaxing the muscles around your eyes is something that's very difficult, especially when you've been taking pictures for a little while and you're you started out with this great expression and then it's
dead eyes.
Yeah. When you feel yourself getting dead eyes, it's good to just say hold on a moment, close your eyes and relax your whole face. And then when you open your eyes again, don't open them too wide and your eyes will be really relaxed. And that's a good point for photographers too. If you see your model's eyes are starting to get kind of dead, or they're getting really, really squinty, just be like, close your eyes, like relax your brow. Okay, now open your eyes, and then you can take the photo.
Did we answer your question? Sorry, we're kind of rambling.
Yeah, no, it helps with the expression kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
So speaking from a photographer's point of view, though, when you're shooting photos of a cosplayer, over the course of a photo shoot, and you start running out of ideas, what do you do in that kind of situation?
What I do first is I ask the cosplayers if they have any pictures that they want to do. It can be silly pictures, because most cosplayers kind of like to do the silly pictures, especially if it's a group. And when they're kind of, when you say, are there any poses you like to do, and they start thinking and they start moving, they're like, And sometimes when they start moving, I find that I'm like, hold that pose. And they're like, what? And I'm like, hold that pose, because that's just like perfect picture. And what sometimes silly pictures, you can turn the silly picture also into a really great pose. Just kind of move the arm or the face.
I've gotten some really great pictures from test shots where it was just me being like, and they like can sometimes be really nice.
It's also, I think, good to have a couple of basic things that'll work for just about anybody. And I wouldn't start with those things, I would end with those things, because I think if you start with something basic, you can kind of limit your brain and limit your creativity. When you start with something more creative, and you're using all of these creative juices, when you run out, coming back to something basic can kind of rejuvenate that creativity.
I think, do you have one more comment?
Just one more thing. How do you deal with, in general, horror convention center lighting?
Do you use external lighting?
I mean, I haven't had external.
I use the external, I just put it to fill light, and I just like jiggle the white balance until it works okay. And then I usually have to go back in Lightroom and be like, But yeah, definitely for a convention center, you kind of have to have external flash if you want like really great lighting, because this is not a cut. It's gonna make everyone look like a zombie. They're like yellow and like you're dying. So yeah, I would just say external flash is the way to go. That's what I do.
Unless you're cosplaying a zombie.
I was joking remote drones with Blake and Larry.
For a session, like how many photos do you typically take? I haven't done a lot of work with cosplayers before.
I take anywhere from 50 to 75 photos per session. I give them 5 to 6. The sessions are 30 minutes long.
Some photographers, I mean, I think it's also, your mileage may vary, because there are photographers that are comfortable doing 5 pictures, there are photographers that are more comfortable doing 100 pictures in 30 minutes.
I don't feel comfortable giving the cosplayer a photo unless I absolutely love the photo. And there are a lot of photos that are kind of okay, but they're not good enough. So 5 photos, 6 photos for me is a great number. Sometimes I only end up with 2. But if they're 2 really, really great photos, that's all I want. And as a cosplayer, remember this from your photographer. You know, you could be like, oh, I got this great picture from you, and I did this pose, and it was so awesome. And sometimes the photographer will say, well, I didn't give you that picture because I don't think it looks like your chin is weird, and respect their opinion, because I think they will not give you photos where they think you look really bad. So.
And don't be afraid to also communicate with the photographer if there is a picture that you took and you come back to it, you think about it later and you're like, you know, I don't really like that, or
always ask, yeah.
I'm actually uncomfortable with that picture, please don't post that. Yeah. Because that's really important. Sometimes you get in the moment and you take some upskirt panty shot, and then you come back to it, you're thinking about it the next day and you're like, actually, that's beyond my comfort zone. Please reach out to your photographer. They're good people. They're not going to consume you.
Nice.
And I think most of them understand and they care about your opinion.
One in the back.
If you are a not-so-tiny cosplayer or you're photographing a not-so-tiny cosplayer, are there any angles or poses that you find them
Yes. Yes. So, first of all, when you are photographing someone who is a bit larger, photograph them from above down. So a lot of photographers like to kneel down and photograph up. That kind of makes the person look bigger if they're already kind of bigger. So don't do that. Don't stand up on a chair, but I like to have them like sit on the floor if they have especially if they have like a nice skirt, just kind of spread it out, and then photograph them down. Another thing is, again, the S-curve. have them like really, really, really pop out their hips, really pop out their chest, and it really gives you a nice curve. Don't shoot them from the side because that makes their stomach look bigger. That's a no.
I would also say, and this is just like in general, because I've done a lot of cosplays where like I have my stomach exposed, and it's always a thing of like how to like not get pictures that look like I'm sucking in, but also how not to have pictures that look like bleh. So basically, it's kind of a thing, like if anyone here does ballet, you're set, because it's a thing that I learned how to do in ballet class. It's a very delicate balance. Of course you can't see this, but like when you suck in, then one, it makes your rib cage wider, because you're expanding your rib cage, and two, if your like stomach is exposed, you'll see your ribs poking out, and I hate seeing pictures of cosplayers where I can tell they're just sucking in because they want to look skinny, and like it's not worth it to look poopy like that. On the other hand, if you're just kind of like I'm standing right now, I mean, it doesn't look that different, but like you would be able to tell if you could see my stomach. It's
like this.
There you go, yeah, like that. So it's a mixture of like holding your abs in. It's a ballet posture thing, if anyone's done ballet, but it's like holding your abs in and at the same time keeping your rib cage down. It's something that like has taken me many years to learn how to do.
I tell people to what's the word? Flex their abs.
Yeah.
So kind of flex your abs, like make them real hard, and you can like feel that they're real hard, and it kind of makes them look flat.
And feel how your chest is when you finish an exhale.
I think she has something to say.
Okay.
There's a way to also figure out how to do that, because that's general dance posture.
Yeah.
You want to be lifting your chest, which will stretch your stomach, and make sure your butt is, you want to like get the S curve and stick it out, but you can also tuck it in, it'll pull your lower abs in. And the way to make my dance teacher actually had told me that to keep your ribs from not expanding so much, pretend you're putting on a jacket one size too small and you're trying to like squeeze a bit to like button it.
That's how I got this
dress. Helps you, like that image helps you stretch and then pull in the rib cage, and then you get like this flatter stomach.
Yeah.
So that's good to remember it.
It's also good when you're photographing a plus-size cosplayer to do a little bit of a curve. So have them face forward and rotate their hips and their feet. So their feet might be at like a 45-degree angle to you, and then to turn their shoulders towards you, because that actually decreases the visual distance of across the waist, which will make the waist look smaller.
This goes for anybody, not just plus-size cosplayers. So, yes, Rose.
Do you have any tips for like getting kind of a graceful hand pose?
Ooh, turn the wrist.
Better.
Yep. If you're reaching your hand out, turn the wrist, and just let your fingers like. I'll also do this if I've been doing it for too long. Shake your hands out, turn the wrist, and just kind of let your fingers drop, and they'll just take this really nice, pretty princess pose.
Okay. In the same vein as that, if I may, I always have people wiggle their fingers and just tell them to stop.
Yeah.
And like that's like, or like I'll be like flex your fingers and stop, and like that's how it happens.
In the back.
Do you use any filters or anything to make the colors pop, or do you usually do that afterwards?
I do all that in Photoshop. The only filters I use is like on my flash. I use gels to like match the color temperature of the lights. But I do all of that in post. I like to use as little post as possible. I'm one of those people. Some people like to have a lot of filters and a lot of posts. I find that kind of detracts from the cosplayer themselves. So I like to keep it simple, but it's really your style and what you like to do. Anyone else?
Is there anything else besides Photoshop?
Lightroom. Well, there's Lightroom.
There's Lightroom. It's a little less expensive than Photoshop. It's by Adobe. There's really, for photographers, I don't think there's really anything to use except Photoshop for the post. I don't, like some people use GIMP for drawing or whatever, but I don't think you use that for photos.
You can use it.
Can you?
Yeah. GIMP is like a free open source software. You can use it. It's kind of the idea of Photoshop. It's just creating.
Yes.
I was going to say, I had a question, but to add on to that, I've got PaintShop Pro. It's a lot cheaper, but it also does a lot less. So
yeah, I know a lot of people use PaintShop Pro for drawing, for digital drawing, but I don't.
Well, I use it for
do you? Okay,
photos.
okay, yeah. So there's PaintShop Pro also.
It does a fair job with things like white balance. It lets me crop, but I do find it doesn't have a problem loading huge photos, but when you're done touching it back up, if you try to save it as the same really high resolution photo, it adds the JPEG artifacts, and by the time you're done, it does not look as good. You have to shrink it down when you're done to something smaller for it to still look really like a good photo. It's really crisp, but it has losses. It's a lot cheaper. Then I have a question, and I know and I understand you make a costume, you've got a full costume, you've got the matching shoes, you've got the fancy hat, you're holding your sword up, and I try to put people into good backdrop. But I don't, especially for people who expand out a whole lot, I feel bad cutting them off at the knees.
Don't ever cut anyone off at the knees.
Well, I like, a lot of times, I like taking a tighter picture, torsoing up, or like a nice face portrait. I like doing some of the tighter stuff, but I don't want to cut off people's shoes, and I don't want to cut off people's whole arms that extend.
Well, what lens are you using? Because if you're using a longer lens, then you're going to cut people off at the knees.
Well, I mix. I've got like a 10 millimeter. I've got a 70 or a 28 to 70, and I've got a 50 to 250. So
the 28 to 70 is probably what you want.
And that's I want to use the most.
I think an alternative would be, especially if it's something that's really detailed, to consider taking a shot that is not the typical perspective of, oh, this is my costume, but maybe take a shot of their feet and maybe the prop against the ground. Or get really creative and cut them off in different ways in order to focus on those parts that you are not necessarily able to get with these really tight shots.
Okay.
Or what I do is I lay on the ground and I shoot up and have them look up at the sky, and that kind of does a dramatic perspective from the ground up.
Okay.
Plus, the cosplayers really appreciate when you get things like their shoes that they spent 3 hours on,
Yes.
and nobody cares about, and the back of your costume that nobody ever looks
Or
at.
the back of their costume.
Yep. Unless they said, I don't want back my costume.
Yes.
One last thing on that vein, photography using Photoshop, you can collage, you can truncate, give them one image, everything.
My friend does this thing with Photoshop. He's been using the same trial for a year now. Basically, whenever he goes to open Photoshop, he rewinds the time on his computer when he downloaded it, and it never updates the trial.
That's illegal.
Yes.
So what about when doing capturing emotion? Would you recommend doing certain things in burst, or how would you recommend doing in individual, single shots?
Okay, so I know we're kind of running out of time, but he's touched on a good point. He's asking about motion shots. For cosplayers, if you want to get a motion shot, make sure your photographer knows what you want. If you're jumping, ask your photographer to be 1, 2, 3, and then jump. And if you're the photographer, you can do a couple of bursts, but don't do too many because you're just going to get weird blur.
Jared took the best jump shot of me.
When you are a cosplayer and you are jumping, make sure your feet, try to kick your feet as far up as possible. Try to kick your butt with both your feet. Otherwise, you just kind of look like you're standing in the air. It's really boring, trust me. Kick your feet up. I can't really do it because my hat's going to fall off. Yeah. Yes. And that will look like you are moving. And make sure your arms are moving out so you're not jumping like this. Again, it's using all your space. And if you're jumping, you have space below you and above you and to the side. So make sure you're using all the space with your arms and kick your feet up. For photographers, yes, you can do the burst, but you're going to get 1 or 2 good pictures in the burst, and then the first couple pictures will be bad, the last couple pictures will be bad. So it's really up to you if you want to do one shot or just burst mode. Yes?
RAW or JPEG?
RAW and JPEG, what about it?
What do you shoot?
I always shoot in RAW. I know some people hate
Can you elaborate
RAW,
on that a little bit? Maybe that's something that's
okay, so as a photographer, I always shoot in RAW. RAW kind of captures the entire, I don't know how to describe it, all the information that you are shooting at that moment is stored in your camera. So when you go back to your computer and you're doing Photoshop or whatever, Lightroom or whatever, you can adjust the white balance, you can adjust the exposure, you can adjust If your photo is too dark, you make it brighter. You can change the colors, you can do the noise level. It's very a wide range of tools for a photographer to use. Some photographers don't like to use RAW because they think it's cheating. I say, hey, we're in the digital age, I can cheat, I'm going to do it.
And
yes.
Oh, sorry. That kind of reminded me.
9 minutes till the next panel. Okay. 9.
Okay. That just reminded me of something kind of for the cosplayers. If your photographer sends you a picture and you're like, that's awesome, I'm going to add flames to it and a dragon in the background, make sure that if you want to edit the picture, ask the photographer first. Because the photographer's created a piece of art in taking this photograph, and they've in any post and any posing and everything that they've done. So it's really can be, first of all, hurtful or offensive, but second of all, it can make people really angry that their work wasn't good enough and that you went in and changed it. And they especially don't like to have someone, or some photographers generally, it's not really appreciated if you change the way it was post-processed into what the photographer feels is not as good, and then post it up online and connect it to the photographer's name. When the photographer gives you a picture, it's something that they think is good, and they don't want to do other effects to it or other things.
Some photographers will let you. Some of them will be like, hey, go crazy, but always ask. Yeah.
Always ask, and don't get upset if they say no, because it is their piece of art. It'd be like someone walking up to you being like, "Oh, this is gonna look better if you cut it off, and we'll add some like pink sparkles over here."
It would look better. Yes.
What do you think of the angle shots? Like you turn the camera?
I'm divided. I do them sometimes. I see photographers who do them all the time, and I think that's overkill. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's like the shot where the thing is tilted, so like you're kind of at an angle. It's called Dutch tilt. It's really up to the photographer and to the cosplayer. If you're a cosplayer and you look at a photographer's photos, like you're like, maybe I want them to take a photo of me, and they do all of their photos are like tilted, you can be sure that your photo will also be tilted. So make sure you like that effect before you book a photographer. Because some people don't like that and they just want like a very nice portrait. And some photographers only do that, and some photographers only do the tilted photos. For me, I do kind of a mixture of both. I don't do that many tilted photos, but I don't think it's bad. I don't know.
One more question?
I just want to add on to the JPEG versus RAW. Every time you edit a JPEG and you save it out, you lose a little bit more, get a little more noisy. So wait, stay in RAW,
yes.
And we go into Photoshop mode. Stay there until you get the last one, then save it to JPEG.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming.